So earlier this week, Kellijuana, one of our viewers here, asked us, what can we do to incentivize media to magnify this story? And I should confess, I don't remember what story Kellijuana, if that is her real name, was talking about. But I am going to give you some secrets based on my own experience in both broadcast and cable news on how to win over at least some segments of the media to your side and focus on the things you want them to focus to. Now, we were talking earlier this week about some of the reporting that I've been doing from out of South Bend police there. That story is getting a fair amount of attention. I also spoke on Monday with our senior investigative reporter, Ken Klippenstein, who's been doing stories about ICE and their practices regarding detainees. That's certainly getting some attention. So the good news is most of the stories, or a lot of the stories that you want to get attention, actually are getting attention. So that's a good thing. But I'm going to broaden it out a little bit and talk about issues that don't get the attention we want, as well as individual specific stories. And the first thing I want to start with is I kind of want to abandon the notion that the people who make TV news are sort of monolithic, agenda-driven, profit-driven robots. They're people who, like most people, like to think of themselves as good people. They're journalists, which means they like to think of themselves as doing good journalism. So if you approach them as if they're monsters, that might very well make you feel good, and it might very well make other people feel good seeing you take them on. And that's fine. Media should be criticized, right? And people should be, it should be an adversarial relationship, right? Media is not above question. So it's part of our job as the audience, when you're not part of the media, to question the media, not just what they say, but what they choose to talk about in the first place. So that said, I think it actually is helpful to, but oh yeah, so my point was, you might feel good and make others feel good by throwing those punches, but you're probably not going to get them to move towards you, right? More flies with honey, catching more flies with honey, right? That's the idea. These are people, not evil, caricatures. I've known people who have worked with Sean Hannity and say he's the nicest guy. So if you yell at them and you scream that they are this or they are that, talking about something deep in their soul that's unchangeable, you lose them, right? That you make them feel like my critic, you're not seeing me, you don't get me at all, so why should I listen to you? So the good thing about the internet is you've got access to these folks. And I will tell you something that probably shouldn't be too much of a secret, but virtually all of them go out there and they check to see what people are saying about them. So you want to sort of you want to focus your efforts. You want to find someone who kind of fits the Venn diagram of someone who's responsive online, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Most of them have a platform where they, if nothing else, they communicate what they're taught, what they're reporting on, what they're covering. They share stories and stuff like that. You want to find the Venn diagram of someone who you genuinely like, right? That's the best place to start, is with someone who you find them appealing as a person. You might not like all their editorial choices, but in general you think, you know what? I like her. She seems fun, she seems smart. I wish you weren't talking about this dingbat story, but generally I like her or him. That's if you find someone like that who's also actively communicating on Twitter, that's a good place to start, right? Because they're listening to you, and you've got a common ground. Because the way you want to start off is not like a drive-by critic. What you want to do is you want to start off as an I'm here for you fan, right? Because if a drive-by critic says something, I don't care. if someone establishes themselves as a fan, then that's what all these people want, right? Me too, right? They want they understand that the beginning of success and the beginning of reaching a broader audience is capturing a base that is there every day, feels strongly about them, and is on their side. And the idea of losing that base is terrifying, right? Kellijuana and some of the other folks whose names I'm starting to recognize, if you guys started dumping on me and saying, you know what, you used to be great, man. Whatever happened to you, man? We used to be beautiful. Like if you guys start saying that, I start to worry. So, but I only start to worry if first you expressed an appreciation for what I'm doing. So what you want to do is you want to establish yourself as credible by praising what they do, not falsely, the things you like about them. I really like the way you think about the issues. I really like the guests you have on. I really like the fact that you asked this question in an interview about whatever. The other thing you want to do is get people on your side. If you're not a lone voice, you're not alone, right? And now you've got a chorus, right? Rather than being part of the base, if you're the entire base, your voice now gets magnified exponentially. Then what you want to do is the standard, more out of sorrow than anger, meaning now you want to start criticizing, and you want to do so not pissed off at them, but I'm really disappointed you went that way. You know, everyone's doing that, and I thought better of you. I really did. I thought better of you. I hope you'll be better tomorrow, right? That kind of thing. It eats it eats at them, right? To feel like they let you down. So when you see them talking about something that's frivolous or stupid or whatever, just sorry to see that. Maybe I'll go check out PBS, but I'll be back. See, once you're done with this terrible segment that I'm sure some producer made you do, because I know you would never choose that yourself, right? So maybe now we're getting a little bit disingenuous, because some of the anchors do choose what they want to talk about, right? There's generally two schools of anchors. There are anchors who essentially are their own best producers, and I've worked with some of those. And there are other anchors who also fall into two categories. There are anchors who will read virtually anything that comes up on the prompter in front of them, and some of those can do that because it's a luxury, because they've trained is the wrong word, but they've worked with their team and assembled their team so that they have justifiable confidence in what's coming up on that prompter. Others are just sitting there reading whatever comes up, and it could be anything, and they don't know the people who wrote it. There's nothing going on there. And those people you're not necessarily going to move. But my guess is the people you like, there's probably some element of them having some control over their own destiny. Because if there's not, there's no point really targeting them. You want to find anchors who exhibit enough of a personality. It kind of signals to you that they're making choices here, right? Because there's not a lot of point if they're just doing whatever they're told. So once you sort of establish that I'm a little disappointed with this choice you made, so I'm going to go away, bye, but I'll be back because I like you generally, and we'll see what you're doing. That kind of thing is going to make them uncomfortable. But it's not necessarily enough. And the other step is help them out, right? I will tell you a little something about my own background. I started off in print as a local reporter in Brooklyn, New York. And I never thought about writing for TV because I just assumed that the people who did it professionally were orders of magnitude better than I could ever be. I just assumed that's Olympus and I will never approach that territory. I was wrong, okay? Dirty little secret, I was wrong. The teams are under-resourced. The shows are often structured in a way that doesn't allow for good ideas to come up. People who shouldn't have jobs do have jobs. So don't assume that the anchor is getting everything they need from their team. So that's my point when I say help them, right? Because it might be that the anchor wanted to do a story about global warming, but they just didn't. The team, their team, couldn't find a guest that they thought would be good enough or exciting enough or whatever it might be. So make suggestions. Tell them, literally tell them the kinds of stories that you would watch and that you would tell other people to watch. And when they do it, when they do come close to that, reward it, right? Reward it so that they've got ammunition. They can now go to their producers and say, look, this went viral when I asked that question. So let's keep doing that. Let's do that more. So that's the nice thing about cable. Is a very small world. If you look at the audiences we're talking about, we're generally talking about fewer than 1 million people, at least in the demo, right? 18 to 54 or whatever it is. So you're already talking about a small pool of people, but the pool of people that the anchors pay attention to, those who are active on social media, is much, much smaller than that. So if you get some allies, you've actually got a chance to have an outsized impact on the way they think and the way they approach the news. So with that, I didn't see any questions come up, but I'm going to see if I can find the chat box. And oh, there we go. Okay, so let's see if anyone's got any questions for me. We've got a lot fewer viewers, so maybe it's a bad idea doing it this early. Kellijuana says, you appear as an insider who might be able to point someone who does not know or follow those types toward a good starting person or group. My problem is that I don't like any of the non-progressives. So I am not currently an insider. I have worked at ABC News, I've worked at CNN, I've worked at MSNBC. I spent something like 5 years working on Countdown with Keith Olbermann. I've worked with a lot of anchors over the years, so that's what I mean when I say there are different types of anchors. And it's not necessarily that one is good or bad, that's just the way things tend to shake out. But for a number of reasons, one of which is me being a little bit spineless here, I don't want to name names like who's good, who's not good. Some of these folks are my friends. Some of them are not my friends. And so I don't want to personalize it. But the bigger point is, I think that it shouldn't be who I like. It should be who you like, right? So my guess is there are people out there, even if you don't watch cable news. And by the way, I'm mystified that anyone watches cable news. And I don't mean that as a dig from someone who's not working in it anymore. When I worked in cable news, I was mystified that anyone watched cable news. So, but if you're on social media, you see clips every once in a while, right? And so it doesn't mean to find someone who you like, it doesn't mean you're going to like everything they do, just the opposite, right? The whole point is to find someone who shows that glimmer of potential, right? Who shows a degree of independent thought, a willingness to violate these sort of unspoken norms about who we talk to on cable news, what we talk about, what kinds of questions. Someone who's willing to break those boundaries a little bit, that's the kind of anchor I think you wanna be thinking about. All right, I think that's pretty much it for questions, which is fine by me. I realize these every Friday I do a little bit of talking about the media, which is not exactly a super hot topic or anything like that, but I do think that I hope it's worthwhile as a project for us to talk about both what we do at TYT. I know there's been a lot of criticism about and speculation about why we're reporting so intensively on Pete Buttigieg, which are fair questions to ask. And TYT is sort of an unusual project in itself, and TYT Investigates is an unusual side project for TYT. So I think it's worthwhile having an opportunity to speak with you guys about what we do. Channel 323 says, I made the live, finally, nice. Awesome job, Jonathan Larsen. Well, thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this being on camera thing, and I'm doing it out of my home, as you can probably tell by the chintzy little backdrop I've got here. So I'm doing my best, but thank you very much. Citizens Media TV says, unrelated, something that's been bugging me about TYT for a long time. You do so much so well, have promoted so much positive over the years. With love and respect, when are you guys going to let go of neoliberal economics and embrace modern monetary theory, MMT? This is critically important for the progressive movement, as MMT is the only view of our economy that actually allows us to achieve the things that Bernie tells us we need to not die, and do it in a way that does not require that we tax the rich in order to do so and would not cause economic Armageddon. John 323 adds they love the backdrop. That's hilarious. So I'm not an economist, Citizens Media TV, and as a journalist, I also try not to make it a practice of endorsing one economic school over another. But I can't speak for what the main channel, because I think that's what you're talking about, what the main channel sort of espouses in terms of their advocacy for specific economic solutions. But I will say this: I've heard of modern monetary theory. I'm not well versed in it enough to know exactly what it means. But I certainly agree with the premise that I used to have Stephanie Kelton on one of the shows I did back when I was at MSNBC, and so I certainly think that there's a very siloed view of economic norms and economic realities, and I think there's a lot of discussion even within the world of economics itself about how it's the science of economics has been somewhat malformed, right, as this rigid predictor of human behavior that just has failed to encompass a whole range of things. So, I'm with. Thank you. Citizens Media TV says, thank you for considering this. So maybe if you can really quickly, Citizens Media TV, type into the chat box a quick summary of what modern monetary theory is, because I've probably heard of it. I'm just not great at keeping the labels attached to the concept. If it's just the idea that you can print more money, I think that's certainly something that is getting more of a hearing. I don't think that's true necessarily in the media or even TYT, but if there's one positive that maybe we can get out of the current presidency, I would say that a willingness to re-examine some of the fundamental tenets that or axioms that we subscribe to about economics might in theory be one of them. Kellijuana says, I like your broadcast. They make me think and bring me a sense of community. I was disappointed when you failed to provide a list of media types that are open to suggestion. So, yes. Okay. Kellijuana says, get it? I used your technique on you. Haha. That's right. That's right. And that's a great example, because I actually was sitting here with a moment of not major panic, but minor panic about like, oh no, how do I address this? And so I think that's a great example, Kellijuana, of how to approach it. It's sort of sinister and evil, so kind of that's pretty amazing. And here's the thing, I wasn't going to change my mind about it. I wasn't going to do it, but I was thinking about it, right? And it did force me to question, well, should I? What are the pros and cons? And even if I didn't change my mind right in the moment, in a real world environment, that comment wouldn't be seen by your anchor or the show that you're addressing until after the fact, most likely. Some of them actually do go in the break and check and see, but it's a long-term project, frankly, winning people over. I'll give you an example of the Young Turks. See, I'm doing exactly what you said now. It worked, and I don't say this because I've never worked with Chris Cuomo, but for the longest time, CNN would not have Cenk or Anna or the Young Turks, people from the Young Turks, on their air. Brian Stelter he has a Sunday show where he talks about media issues, and so in that context, he's had some of the Young Turks on. But Chris Cuomo recently has had Cenk Uygur on the air as a panelist discussing ideas. So I don't know whether there was some uprising on Twitter of people banging the drum to get Cenk on, or how that came about, but things can change. And one of the I actually tell people this all the time, and no one believes me, but I actually think the profit motive is not followed enough. Meaning that if the cable news and broadcast to some extent, if everyone within it were driven by the profit motive, they would be ruthless about a willingness to try new things, even if it were uncomfortable for them, even if it caused some adversarial engagements internally, right? But they would be forced to try new things. And in the competition, right, CNN, MSNBC are sort of consistently battling it out for a second in the ratings, in the cable ratings, with Fox usually up at the top. So if they think that the margin between them and beating their rival is just a little bit, and you guys are out there saying, do this and we'll love you, don't do this and we're going to check out something else, now that narrow cable universe and narrow social media thing is now operating on a really narrow scope in terms of what's victory, what's defeat versus their rival. So it's a leverage point, and it doesn't take too much. It's a long whatever you call it to the fulcrum. So you potentially do have some power there. You ended up getting me to name Chris Cuomo, for instance, which again, just a hypothetical. I don't know him. I don't know the guy. I've never worked for him. It's just an example that came up for me. Okay, Citizens Media promises to introduce MMT to me. That's what I do. So I will confess, I actually have read about it. I'm just spacing at the moment on what the particulars are. But I'm about to shut this down, and so I'll ask you, Citizens Media TV, if you can put it in the comments. I will check it out, because now I'm annoyed at myself for not having remembered. So I'll close out, as always, by thanking you guys for being here with us, for joining the conversation. It means something to me to be able to have these chats every day, and I kind of especially like the ones on Friday where we can just talk about how media work, and I really appreciate, Kellijuana, your engagement with that. So if you don't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Facebook, whatever it is. And again, as always, if you find what we're saying here useful, our stories, our commentary, our chit chat about media, I hope you'll share it, and I hope you guys will have a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday.